At its peak, one company controlled nearly 60% of all department store sales in Canada. 66 flagship stores, 12,000 employees. A catalog so essential, it was called the Prairie Bible. Eaton's wasn't just where Canadians shopped, it was how Canada saw itself. Then in December 1999, it was gone. Liquidated. Its stock collapsed from $15 to 47 cents. 130 years of dominance, erased in under a decade. How does a shopping empire that defined a nation simply go silent? It started with one radical promise in a small Toronto shop in 1869. Timothy Eaton arrived in Toronto in 1869 with a vision shaped by hardship and a stubborn sense of fairness. Born in County Donegal, Ireland, he had learned the trade as an apprentice in a small Ontario shop where haggling and credit were the rules of the day. But Eaton believed that trust could be built only on clarity. He sold his stake in a country store, borrowed from his brother, and invested $6,500 in a narrow building at 178 Yonge Street. On May 15, 1869, the doors opened to T. Eaton and Company, a dry goods shop that looked unremarkable from the street. But inside, everything was different. Above the counter, a sign read, "One price, no haggle." Each item carried a single bold price tag. There was no bargaining, no secret deals. On May 23rd, just a week after opening, Eaton published an ad in the Toronto Globe. All goods at one price, no bargaining, no shillings lost to the middleman. The message was simple, but radical. In a city where shopkeepers expected customers to argue over every penny, Eaton refused to negotiate. He posted another notice. "We accept cash only, no bills of exchange, no promissory notes." This wasn't just a business tactic. In letters to his brother, Eaton insisted that honest pricing was a moral promise. If the price was fair, he wrote, customers would come back. If it wasn't, they wouldn't. He trained his staff to turn down any request for a discount, and he handed out printed cards explaining the policy to every shopper who entered. The shop's layout reinforced the message: low tables, glass-covered price tags, a single counter for all cash transactions. The store was clean, orderly, and easy to navigate. Women, who often managed household purchases, found a place where they could shop without the anxiety of bargaining or the risk of running up debts. Working-class families could send their children to buy a shirt or a spool of thread, confident that the price would be the same for everyone. Eaton's approach stood out in a city of ledgers filled with unpaid balances and backroom deals. His early records showed only cash sale entries, a stark contrast to the complicated credit columns kept by his rivals. Within 3 years, Toronto newspapers praised the store as a place where a mother may send her children to buy a frock without fear of being swindled. By insisting on fixed prices and cash-only sales, Timothy Eaton built something rare, a store where every customer could trust the deal. That promise would become the DNA of a brand that would one day reach across a continent. By the early 1930s, the T. Eaton Company stood at the undisputed summit of Canadian retail. At its height around 1930, Eaton's commanded nearly 60% of all department store sales across the nation, a figure that dwarfed every rival and set a standard few could even approach. This was not just a Toronto story or a tale of urban prosperity. From Vancouver to Halifax, Eaton's was the name on the storefronts anchoring city blocks and small-town main streets alike. The numbers behind this dominance speak for themselves. In 1925, Eaton's payroll listed 12,000 employees, sales staff, warehouse workers, catalog clerks, and delivery drivers, making it one of the largest private employers in the country. That workforce would swell even further as the decade advanced, supporting a vast network that by 1935 included 66 flagship stores. Each of these locations exceeded 150,000 square feet, offering everything from fine apparel to household goods under a single roof. The scale was unprecedented in Canadian commerce. Eaton's reach extended far beyond the city core. The company's catalog, already a fixture in rural homes, turned isolated farmhouses into outposts of the national market. But the beating heart of the empire was the department store itself, cathedrals of glass and stone where shoppers could browse the latest fashions, sample imported delicacies, or simply marvel at the sheer abundance on display. The company's annual reports from this era read like a ledger of national ambition. Sales figures that outpaced the competition, new store openings announced in rapid succession, and a workforce that mirrored the country's own growth. Government retail statistics confirm that Eaton's share of the department store market peaked at levels rarely matched, before or since. This was more than business success. Eaton's became a fixture in the Canadian imagination, a symbol of progress, reliability, and shared experience. Its stores were gathering places, its catalog a household reference, its brand woven into the rhythms of daily life. The sheer scale of Eaton's dominance in the 1930s set the stakes for everything that followed, casting a long shadow over both its cultural influence and the magnitude of its eventual decline. In the Canada of the early 20th century, a battered cardboard box bearing the Eaton's crest could land on a farmhouse porch hundreds of miles from the nearest city. Inside, a world of possibility, dresses, boots, stoves, even the latest phonograph, ordered by mail and delivered by rail. The Eaton's catalogue, first published in 1884, was more than a shopping guide. For families from the Maritimes to the prairies, it became a lifeline and a window onto modern life. By the 1920s, over 1.2 million copies were printed for each edition, reaching into every corner of the country. Rural postmasters called it the Bible. Children cut out its pages for paper dolls, and newlyweds used it to furnish entire homes. Prices were set, choices were abundant, and for many, Eaton's brought the outside world to their doorstep. The catalog's reach was matched only by the spectacle of the annual Santa Claus Parade. Beginning in 1905, a single float rolled down Toronto's streets, drawing curious crowds. Within a generation, the event had swelled into a national tradition. By the 1930s, more than 250,000 people lined the parade route from Massey Hall to Union Station, braving November cold for a glimpse of Santa's sleigh and the elaborate floats that signaled the true start of the Canadian Christmas season. Radio broadcasts carried the sounds of marching bands and children's laughter across the country. From 1952 on, CBC television brought the parade into living rooms as far away as Vancouver and St. John's. The parade endured through wars and recessions, becoming an anchor for families and a symbol of hope in hard times. In 1948, Eaton's introduced Pumpkinhead, a small teddy bear with a tuft of orange hair and a storybook heart. Pumpkinhead was more than a toy. He was a holiday companion, featured in parade floats and Christmas displays, and sold in the hundreds of thousands. For generations of children, receiving a Pumpkinhead bear meant Christmas had truly arrived. The bear's image appeared on everything from mugs to pajamas, and his adventures filled the pages of Eaton's branded storybooks. Pumpkinhead became a household name, his presence as familiar as the catalogue on the kitchen table. These traditions, catalogue, parade, and beloved bear, were not just marketing. They shaped the rhythms of Canadian life, weaving Eaton's into the fabric of everyday experience. The company's name became shorthand for reliability, celebration, and connection. When the catalogue arrived or the parade rolled through town, it wasn't just commerce, it was community. The emotional imprint of these rituals lingered long after the last store closed, a reminder of what was lost when the empire faded from the national stage. In 1978, Eaton's took a gamble that would expose the first deep fracture in its empire. The Horizon stores arrived with little fanfare but enormous ambition, pitched as a modern answer to the rising threat from discount giants like Zellers and Kmart. The plan was bold: launch a chain of low-cost, no-frills outlets under a new name, sidestepping the prestige and the baggage of the Eaton's brand. 30 Horizon locations opened their doors that year, clustered in suburban plazas and mid-sized cities across Ontario and Quebec. Each store offered stripped-down service, a narrow range of household basics, and a promise of everyday low prices. John Craig, then at the helm as president, insisted that Horizon would reclaim ground lost to discount competitors. Internal memos from the period show a leadership team desperate to prove Eaton's could adapt. Yet the experiment stumbled from the start. Shoppers found the stores anonymous and uninspiring, lacking both the polish of traditional Eaton's and the energy of the newer American chains. The company's own research revealed a problem. Loyal Eaton's customers saw Horizon as a step down, while bargain hunters still preferred the established discounters. Financial reports from 1979 paint a stark picture. Horizon failed to generate the sales volume needed to offset its razor-thin margins. Losses mounted quickly, draining resources from Eaton's core business, just as the retail landscape was shifting. By 1980, only a handful of Horizon stores remained open, their shelves half-stocked and their aisles quiet. The last location closed its doors in 1995, a quiet end to a costly miscalculation that had begun with such urgency. The Horizon chapter left scars. It exposed the company's growing uncertainty about its own identity and foreshadowed a pattern of reactive moves that would define the decades ahead. For John Craig and his team, the failure was more than financial. It was a warning that the old playbook no longer worked. The empire that once set the rules for Canadian retail had misread the moment, and the consequences would echo through every attempt at renewal that followed. In the spring of 1997, the numbers on Eaton's balance sheet no longer told a story of strength. After decades of shrinking market share and mounting competition, the company's hold on Canadian retail slipped beneath a critical threshold. Eaton's controlled just 10.6% of the department store market, a shadow of its former dominance. The debt had swollen to $760 million, a figure that dwarfed even the most optimistic forecasts for recovery. On June 4th, the board made a desperate move, filing for protection under the company's Creditors Arrangement Act. The announcement sent a jolt through the stock market. Shares tumbled in a single day, and the company's future was thrown into doubt. For the people behind the counters and in the stockrooms, the fallout was swift and personal. More than 2,000 employees learned their jobs were gone. Among them was Marie Lefebvre, who had worked in the Montreal flagship store for nearly 20 years. She remembers the morning the layoffs were announced, the hush in the break room, the managers with envelopes in hand, the shock on faces that had grown familiar over decades. For Marie, Eaton's was not just a job, but a second home, a place where co-workers celebrated birthdays, where regular customers knew her by name, where the rhythm of the store shaped the rhythm of her life. The loss rippled outward. In small towns, the closure of an Eaton's branch meant more than empty shelves. Local shops that relied on the foot traffic of Eaton's customers saw their own sales dry up. In city centers, the sudden spike in vacant storefronts changed the character of entire neighborhoods. The layoffs left thousands of families scrambling for income in a job market that offered few alternatives. For many, the end of Eaton's was the end of steady work, of health benefits, of a sense of belonging. Behind the headlines and quarterly reports, the collapse took on a human face. Marie describes packing up her locker, folding her uniform for the last time, and walking out onto St. Catherine Street with nowhere to go. She still keeps her last name tag in a drawer, a small reminder of the years when Eaton's was more than a store, when it was a part of who she was. The spiral of bankruptcy protection and mass layoffs marked the beginning of the final unraveling, setting the tone for a reckoning that would soon engulf the entire company. In April 1998, Eaton's made its final, desperate bid for survival. The company's first public offering hit the Toronto Stock Exchange at $15 a share, a price that suggested hope to some and denial to others. Within 16 months, the market delivered its verdict. Eaton's stock collapsed to just $0.47. The numbers told a story of vanishing confidence. Investors, creditors, and suppliers alike saw no credible path to recovery. As the summer of 1999 wore on, the board scrambled for a lifeline. Negotiations with Federated Department Stores, the parent company of Macy's, offered the faint possibility of a partial rescue. Talks centered on selling up to 16 Canadian locations, a move that might have preserved a fragment of the brand. But as the weeks dragged on, the deal unraveled. On August 16, 1999, the Shepherd Avenue West Distribution Center closed its doors, leaving 300 people without work. That same day, an Ontario court approved the appointment of Gordon Brothers as liquidator. The order was clear: Eaton's would be dismantled, its remaining assets sold off in a 30-day going-out-of-business sale. The end came quickly. Stores across the country slashed prices and emptied their shelves, while longtime employees packed up decades of memories in cardboard boxes. The four Eaton brothers left their offices, and the last advertisements fell silent. For the first time in 130 years, the company that once defined Canadian retail was no longer in control of its own fate. In September 1999, Sears Canada stepped in, acquiring the Eaton's name and 19 prime locations for $30 million. A new executive, brought in from Sears's Chicago headquarters, described the acquisition as a chance to revive a legendary brand. But the plan faltered. The rebranded stores struggled to attract shoppers, and the Eaton's identity, so powerful for generations, proved impossible to transplant. By March 2002, Sears announced it would retire the Eaton's banner for good. The last signs came down on March 12, closing the book on more than a century of retail history. What remained was an absence: empty anchor stores, faded logos, and a silence where once there had been parades, catalogs, and the steady hum of commerce. The fall of Eaton's was not just the loss of a business, but the disappearance of a shared national touchstone. In the words of a Sears executive, "You can buy a name, but you can't buy a legacy." Once, a single company shaped how Canadians shopped, celebrated, and saw themselves. Now, no institution holds that power. As brands vanish from main streets and digital giants redefine commerce, Eaton's fall stands as a warning. Dominance is never permanent, and nostalgia offers no shield against change. The future of retail remains unwritten. Its next chapter will be shaped by those who adapt, not those who remember. Share your thoughts below.